Do your children have a good relationship with each other, or are they more likely to fight than enjoy each other's company? As parents, we play a key role in helping nurture a good sibling relationship and reduce sibling rivalry and conflict. Tonight, Today, I'm here with Noelle Rhodes and Alana Kuwabara to talk about what it means to cultivate healthy sibling relationships. Before we get started, I want you guys to let me know what product, service, or system is making your mom life easier now.
I'll go. I even brought mine to school today. I bought this, and this is no plug. I bought this it is notes off. I bought this legit appointment book. This is different than a calendar or planner. You see how I don't know if you can see. You see how every hour is laid out, but that's a whole week like this.
Yeah.
This has been a game changer for me, and I've tried many many different systems. Kimberly can attest to that. This was like $8, and I could just see everything.
I like that.
In just I'm not good at showing things on Zoom, but in just one go. And because it's the full day in one little column, I just feel like I don't have to turn pages. Literally, this just stays open like this on my desk all week long, or I'll throw it in my pocketbook if I need to. But I'm like, why didn't I do this sooner? Why did I try to be fancy with bullet journals and panda planners and all these things that we do? $8 changed my life.
They have the squares, which is perfect for time blocking.
Well,
I mean, is that what you do with it? Yeah.
That's what I do with it. And it really, I'm telling you, it shows me where I'm wasting time, because it just shows your whole day and your whole week. It's wonderful.
That's really good.
It's good. I highly recommend it if you're someone who struggles with time management. Even if you just use it for a month, it's really helpful.
Yeah.
So that's my big system.
I like that. I like to time block, and my time blocking changes. I'd like to think I have certain days and certain times, and I can just do a Google printout and you can see the beautiful colors, but it never works because it's always different. My schedule is never the same. So I might like that.
Target, baby.
All right, Alana, what about you?
Okay, this is also not an ad or a plug necessarily, but we got the kids for Christmas debit cards.
That's
and
cool.
Yeah, so it's this, I don't know if there's other options out there, but this particular one's called Greenlight debit cards, and it has an app.
Ooh.
And they each have their own profile, and they earn a little, it's 0.01% interest in their savings. So there's a checking and a savings, and then there's different categories in each, and you can make up your own ones, and then people can gift them money, which is, I gotta say, it's not the easiest process. Okay. I think they can work on that a little bit. Anybody's listening from Greenlight, just make it a direct deposit situation. But regardless of that, the reason why it's making my mom life easier is because we were just laughing about this the other day, that there's been cash in our home that just cycles through, and the kids will find money somewhere, and they'll be like, I want to buy this add-on to my app that I'm playing with on the iPad. And so they give you, $2, and then I'm not putting $2 in the bank. So now I got this $2 somewhere, and then they're like, Mom, can I have $2 or something? Yeah, sure. And then later they're like, Mom, I have $2. Can I buy this thing? And you're like, yeah, sure. This $2 just keeps going back and forth. I'm like, this has to stop. This has to stop. So that was honestly my number one selfish motivation for these debit cards, because I wanted to start tracking better and not have this cash that never hits the bank. But also, it's been great to help them do math. I homeschool, so it's an opportunity to do math. It's an opportunity to understand personal finances and budgeting, and you can add chores and allowance to it, and chores can have a value to it. And so we started coming up with a better system for, there's a base level chores that they just have to do. You have to do those chores. This has nothing to do with money. But if you want to earn some money, you go above and beyond that, and you can do these other chores, and they have a certain amount of money attached to them. And I had to yell at them the other day. I didn't yell at them, but I raised my voice and I was like, "You're leaving money on the table."
Yeah.
Because you could earn $5. You're doing nothing. What are you doing with your life? Go over there, clean that thing, earn five. You do these 4 or 5 tasks and earn $5. You're gonna spend 10 minutes doing it. So just the opportunity to kind of teach them all that stuff. And also go, do you have your debit card with you? Like if we go to Target, like make sure they have their little wallets. It's like the cute thing ever. I'm like, don't leave that on a shelf somewhere. Forget about it, because I'm not paying for this. And so they got to go through the checkout with the woman who was checking them out. It was like the cutest thing. They're like putting their debit card in. And so, yeah, I'm enjoying it all around, and they are too.
And check that out. You gonna put that in the show notes?
Yeah. I'll link to all
I
of it.
should. I have a link if you want to get.
Then, no, you gotta put that link
in the
a
show
referral
notes.
link.
Yes.
Love
so you
it.
can tell me where to get their old school appointment book, Noelle.
Target gives me nothing. I'm always promoting Target. They give me
That's
nothing.
okay.
Just take my money. And
We can still link to it in case people are like, what the heck does it look like? All right. So my mom life hack, making mom life easier, is my remote start on my car. Now, the car did come with an app. Like we've had several different remote starts on our cars. Like our van is older, it's paid off, but we with the key fob, we can remote start it. But then our newer car that we lease, there's an app on my phone. And I have to say, I didn't really use it for the first year I had it, but I have been using it all winter. And it's phenomenal because I can actually like lock the door, when I'm at a restaurant and I forgot to lock it, or like, there's times I've walked away and I go, shoot, was it locked? I don't know. But the best part is starting it in the morning, and it actually allows me a couple different settings. So I can choose which setting. So if it's like snowy, I can do the one with the defrosts, or if it's hot outside, I could do the one with the air conditioner. So, I have to take my kids to school. I have to take my son around 7:45, around like 7:40, I hit that button, get that going. By the time I get out there, the ice is defrosted, or the seats are warm, or whatever it is I want it to be. I want it to do, it does, which just makes things a little bit easier for me in the mornings. I'm a little bit happier to kind of like slide into that seat. So here in New Jersey, it's amazing.
Cold right now.
It's so cold.
I still gotta go. I'm old school. I gotta get up at 4:00 in the morning to go to the gym. And I got to go out there in that cold and stick my keys in, turn it on, and hope it warms up.
Yeah.
It's a very hard life for me. Really hard.
I know it is definitely a luxury. I know that even cars nowadays, you can pretty easy get like an aftermarket start kit.
Right.
And if you're in like extreme temperatures, it's worth it.
Yeah.
It really is. Especially with little ones, if you've got to get them in the car. And yeah, for sure. All right. So on to siblings, getting along, doing what we can so that they'll be friends. I think this is really important and sometimes overlooked. And I want to know what you guys think about this. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I just think you have strong thoughts.
I have strong thoughts, so you go first. I don't want to scare the people.
I'll get my weak
no
thoughts out of the way.
Yours is not weak. I just think mine are a little bit opinionated. That's all.
Okay, well, I think I'm probably opinionated about it too, but I just think siblings are for life. That's a relationship that's just forever. So it's just wisdom to have a good relationship with the people that you live with. And, could be 18 plus years that you're going to live with this person. And then I think it also prepares you for relationships with other people. I mean, this is where, for me as a mom, like this is where I teach my kids how to share, how to be generous. It's like, this relationship is one of the most, and if it's a bad relationship, it will affect other areas of your life. And it's just, I think it's just so critical to have good relationships with your siblings. They're a friend when you have no friends, if you have a good relationship with them. So
And you have a line that you always say in most episodes.
I was just going to say, what's
and
the line?
I think you need to say it.
Oh, God.
It's so true. Say it.
Family is the first society.
Yeah. So
It
true.
is.
So true.
Mm-hmm.
My
strong feelings.
My strong feelings
Let's
about
go.
it. Well, it's gonna like be a little bit deep and dark for a second here.
Okay.
So in the Bible, the very first sin we ever read about is when Eve eats from the tree of the garden of good and evil, and God said, don't do that, right? And that's the first sin. The second sin we read about is Cain murdering his brother Abel. And I've been thinking about this for a different reason, but I was thinking about how like what a weird, like just like, okay, that whole first of the Bible's weird, but like what a weird, like this is the first story we hear about a sibling relationship and it ain't healthy. It ends bad, he gets brutally murdered. And I was thinking about how, when there is sibling conflict, I really think it has a lot to do more with inner issues. And it's your siblings that kind of sort of, because they're the first society, right? It's sort of they're the people that kind of bring out the worst in you, and they also know the worst in you. And I think when there's issues and there's clashing and there's conflict and you're not getting along, it's sort of like kind of like there's a deeper issue lying underneath. And for Cain, he didn't feel like he was enough. He didn't feel like the sacrifice he gave it wasn't what the Lord wanted, and he was jealous of Abel, and it ended in murder. I'm not saying that all of our sibling problems are going to end in murder, but when there's a conflict, there's an inner issue that needs to be addressed. And I think as a parent, it's an opportunity when you see your kids are being a little bit more, snappy at each other, or maybe even being manipulative, or just always putting them down. Like, well, what's going on? Like deeper. And as a parent, if this is an opportunity for us to be like, okay, like what's the issue? It may actually have nothing to do with what's happening between you two. It has to do with you. And then it becomes a pattern in the relationship. And then, you're 55 years old and you haven't spoken to your sister in 20 years. But really that started with an issue that you had deep down inside. And I think, for parents, either, and I'm generalizing here, okay, either we're very passive about sibling conflict and we're like, oh, this kid, brothers and sisters and sisters and sisters and brothers, that's how they are, and they're just gonna fight, and we don't use it as an opportunity to talk about what's happening in the heart, or we just kind of like, come on, everyone get along, and just sort of not address the issue, address the symptom. And this is my very strong opinion about it. And thank you for coming to my TED Talk. That's my very strong opinion about it, because I feel like we don't do, and I include myself in that. It's only been until recently when I start studying the story of Cain and Abel, I'm like, yo, like our issues with our siblings often have to do with issues within ourselves.
Well, you think about some of the other sibling relationships in the Bible. You think about Ishmael and Isaac. I mean, those are two nations that are still at war with each other. And then you want to talk about, even Esau and his brother Jacob. I mean, like families and tribes pitted against each other for generations. Yeah.
There's not a ton of good examples, are there?
No.
Even Mary and Martha had issues. Martha's like, she's lazy. Tell her to help me. No, and what did Jesus do in that moment? He addressed Martha's heart.
Ooh.
So, yeah.
I'm just saying, this is my strong opinion, but I do think it's a missed opportunity. And this is why talking about it on the show is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think why it's important, Kimberly?
Well, I mean, like you said, like there's seeds being sown in our kids' hearts and in their lives when they're young and in relationship to one another. And selfishly, I think you mentioned this already, like I want to like my kids. I want my family life to be peaceful. I want my kids to get along because I want to enjoy family life. I want to enjoy our vacations. If we're spending money on vacations, if we can't get our kids to get along, I mean, what is that? Like, what's the point of all of it? Right.
Right.
But I also want my kids to have healthy relationships because I want them to be close in the future. You know, when I'm not here anymore, years and years and years from now, I want them to still have a relationship. I want there to be like, I want our future to be full of connectivity and strength and for it to be enjoyable. And so I do think that it's really important. And I love that you touched on, you know, this idea of being passive and having an expectation that siblings won't get along. Like we don't need to put up with that. We don't need to accept that. And we need to understand that if we let things happen now while they're young and not be rooted up, and we don't address those situations and we don't teach our kids how to handle those situations, they're just going to carry them into the future.
Yeah, it's true. What do you think we believe in our culture about sibling relationships besides just like they won't get along? That's just not true about sibling relationships.
That's a great question, Noelle. Yeah, I think, you know, that we also can have an expectation that they should get along. So we can have this expectation that like, oh yeah, siblings, they fight, sibling rivalry, that's to be expected. But then we can also have an expectation that they should get along all the time, 100% of the time. And I had a very wise friend of mine who was older. She has adult children. And I was talking to her about my kids at the time. And she said that her mother had said to her, so this is wisdom coming, you know, down through the chains here. But she said to her, you know, you can't expect people who are together practically 24 hours a day to get along every minute of the day. You have to give them space. And that's one of so I really took that to heart. And I realized that that's true. There's not really anyone that I would want to never not be around ever, never be by myself, and just always be everywhere we go, every time we eat, everything we do, you're there. You know what I mean? It's like they're bound to have conflict. They're bound to get on each other's nerves. So you have to give them space. Sometimes if they're grating each other's nerves, I just go, that's it. Everybody needs alone time. Everybody find something to do by themselves immediately.
That's good. I mean, as much as we want to do something and make them get along, I think there is a time and a place to give them space for sure.
Absolutely.
You know, and I think that this whole idea, you know, we go back to this like passive approach to our kids' friendships. I think we make a lot of excuses around like their age, maybe if there's a large age gap, or we make excuses around their different personalities. And we say, oh, well, they're like oil and water. They don't naturally get along. They're just so different. My two girls or whatever are so different. But I do think that is not an okay reason to allow disconnection or your kids to not have a good relationship. You know, we want to be training our kids to deal with the real world. And in the real world, we have to get along with people that aren't like us. We have to work and even play with people that have different personalities than themselves. And that's not a good excuse. You know, like I would say if we were to describe my daughters, they're very different. They have very different personalities, but I've thankfully have seen a very incredible relationship blossom between them because, you know, we didn't sort of emphasize, like I've heard people say, oh, they're so different. Well, they just don't get, you know, they don't get along. Like, again, this idea of like naming things and labeling them with things that they overhear and start to believe. And then they start to make excuses themselves of why they shouldn't have to get along with their sibling because after all, they do X, Y, and Z, and that's not who I am. And I don't think age difference or personalities should prevent siblings from having a relationship.
I mean, I'm 13 years older than my sister, and I'm 15 years older than my youngest brother.
And that's big.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then I have a brother who's 4 years younger than me too. And same parents. I don't know. My parents got wild and crazy 13 and 15 years later. It was a different relationship for sure, but incredibly valuable to my life for sure. I mean, my brother and sister Seth and Dominique are much younger, and Noah as well, because he'll be upset if I don't say his name. He'll be like, "You didn't mention me." I have deep respect for all of them, and they're incredibly brilliant, talented people. But they've been really, they've really blessed me as an adult too. So even though like I used to change my 15-year-old brother's, diapers in high school, and my mom would be like, "Take him for a walk." I'm like, "No, I don't want to take my, infant brother for a walk. I'm 15 years old." Like now he's just, he sews into my kids. My kids just look up to him, and it's just cool, like how God has used even our large age gap to be a blessing in my life, because they're like the cooler younger, aunt and uncle. Both my brothers and my brother's wife and my brother's girlfriend and my sister and her husband, like they're just so cool. And and yet they care about my kids. So it's cool. Like, yeah, God uses it all for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And talk about sowing seeds. If you had have neglected those relationships when they were young and you were young, you wouldn't have that right now.
No.
Yeah.
So what are the things?
Well, I would say, first of all, just that general foundation of, treating others the way you want to be treated, the golden rule, basic etiquette, in general, always saying thank you and please, all of those kinds of things. That's just universal. Like your sibling, you don't get a pass on being, using basic etiquette with your sibling.
Yeah.
It's
good.
I really try to stop them if, they'll say things like, "Hey, that's mine." Like, I'll go, whoa, 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 whoa. We don't do that here. We share. So let's figure out a way to share whatever this is, or take turns with whatever this is, or put it away. I really try to stay away from this mentality of like, these are my things and you can't have them, which we all, kind of lash out like that every now and then. I need someone to help me sometimes, but and I also encourage them to help each other. And this is one that really gets on my daughter's nerves because she's very conscientious. She makes her bed every morning. Her room is like pristine except for the closet, because that's where she shoves everything away. But she wants her room like, you're not allowed to jump on her bed. It's like this. And my son is like the exact opposite. He's like me. I'm like, I would like it to look that way, but if it doesn't bother me.
Right.
Until it does, and then it has to look that way.
Right.
So, I like that I want them to help each other. And so sometimes if they've been playing together, the mess might not be equally distributed between them. But I say, to my daughter, like, you need to help him. He's a little younger than you. He doesn't have the eye for cleanliness that you have. Help him and help each other. They get each other drinks. Can you get me some water from while you're in the kitchen? Yes, I can, because that's how we need to be just as people.
Good.
And then the last thing I'll say about that is making sure that they get quality individual time.
That's good.
Kind of going back to that whole, like, how many hours a day can you really be with one person without them getting on your nerves? Like, they're regularly doing things together, and it's getting less frequent now that they're getting older.
Right.
But I try to make sure that I have, and my husband, we try to make sure that we have quality time with them individually, so they're not feeling like they're always kind of vying for our attention as a group.
Yeah, I saw a big change in my kids when that happened, because I felt like when they were real little, they all just wanted me. And I kind of treated them like one entity, all three of them at the same time, because that's all I could do. And I saw a big difference in that when I started to spend one-on-one time with them, and I carved out that time by taking them out on lunch dates.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Makes a big difference.
That's
Well,
fun.
I'm a big fan of just having fun, like creating opportunities for them to have fun together.
Mm.
We had, I mentioned this before, like I forced my kids to do tennis together. I'm like, bye-bye, I'm dropping you off. So whether I'm dropping them off to take a tennis lesson or dropping them off at the movie theater, and my kids are a little bit older, so I was able to do that, we've been doing that for a little while now. But once they're old enough to kind of go someplace on their own and for me to pick them up later, I encourage them to do that. They need to have fun together. I think that sometimes when they are enjoying themselves with us, it's not the same as when they're enjoying themselves with each other without us around. And so that's been really helpful for us. And I also think too, like not just having fun together, but doing projects and working together. So if I have something that needs to be done around the house and certainly one person can do it, well, maybe I have two or all three of them do it, and I divide up the job so that they can do it together. So that practice of them working towards a common goal to get something accomplished, I think that builds their relationship.
I like that.
Oh yeah. There's not a lot of things that can speed up building a relationship than working on a project together, especially if neither of you wants to be doing it.
Yeah.
That's great bonding time.
Yeah.
Team
Nothing
building
bonds you
exercises.
than like having a common enemy, right? And the enemy being a couple loads of laundry to fold. Yeah. I've seen that.
Sure.
I've seen that. I think, okay, well, we lived in Northern Ireland for a few years, and so we had no family around us. And I think I got like, not intentionally, but I'm glad I really focused on my kids' sibling relationship quite early on, because it was like, these are the only people you got here. You got to like be friends. And one of the things that we do in our family is when there is conflict, we really talk it out. And I have to say, this is kind of, I sort of take this lead in the parenting team that we are. Like my husband's like, oh my gosh, do we really have to talk about this? I'm like, we need to talk about this. But if there's conflict, I kind of will peel back the layers to get to like the issue. And if they're like fighting over, I don't know, like who's gonna do what, I'm like, why can't we make a plan? What are you feeling? I ask them, what are you feeling right now? And I do try to encourage them to talk vulnerably about their feelings in front of one another, because often it's sort of what brings the resolution is when the other person sees, well, this person is feeling like, you always take them for granted and you always expect that they're going to pick up the workload that you didn't do, and they're feeling very unappreciated by you. And for my kids, it's been a real gift to be able to like do a lot of emotional coaching with them and talk about feelings. But one rule we do have, it's like we have a no tolerance policy for one physically assaulting your sibling. Like there's never a good reason to do that. And honestly, I don't even like it in jest. And I know siblings do that. But I just feel like it always goes bad. I mean, even the punch buggies I'm talking about, punch buggy red, it's like it never leads to like a hug at the end. So we just like, don't hit each other. Like, don't do it. It's not like, you're not allowed to do that outside this house. So, you hit your coworker, that's it. Sorry. You're not only fired, you're going to jail. So we don't do that, but also there's like a no tolerance policy for exploiting each other's weaknesses or shaming each other. And not that my kids do that, but I've been like, you're not to do that. Like, you're not to like bring to light their weakness, to control them or to make them feel smaller than you. That's just not cool. And I think those are things that like really toxic sibling relationships have, is that sibling that always makes you feel like crap in the room, or always happens to mention that you used to be afraid of the dark, or you're still afraid of the dark, and that's why you don't sleep over anyone's houses.
Because they know you better than anybody else.
And
right?
As parents, when I'm being a passive parent, I call that, oh, they're pushing each other's buttons. But I have now reframed that to call it what I think it really is, which is like manipulation. It's exploiting each other, and it's not going to build a healthy relationship. It's just not cool. So like, we kind of like, no, you can't do that. Like, there's not even there's no context which that's allowed.
That's good.
So, and I think it's kind of created like this is a terrible way to describe it, but like a safe space. Like you need to be able to make each other feel safe, to be vulnerable, to be able to fail in front of each other, to be able to, I mean, you're not going to get along all the time. That's not going to happen for all the reasons, Alana, that you brought up, but you got to be able to be messy in front of each other with your growing upness and not feel like that person's going to use it against you.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes as parents, I wished I kind of figured this out earlier on, to be honest with you. I actually said that to my kids, like, this is what you're doing when you do this, and it's not okay. So that's the big thing we do. And we do reward and positively affirm when they are getting along. We're like, oh, look at you guys. Like, we love that they're watching The Mentalist right now. And they're like dedicated to it. My kids are older, they're teenagers. And we're finishing all seasons. And we're like, we love that you have a thing and you have a show, and we don't like that show, and you guys can watch it together. And it's like, and we're like, you know what, we're gonna buy you the snacks because we just love it so much, so we try to do that too, so they kind of know, like, oh, we're enjoying each other's company. Mom and dad really like that. And it it's that whole thing. That Bible verse that says how good and pleasant it is when brothers dwell in unity. That's the only version that I know, but I'm like, it's true. It's like when siblings are dwelling with one another in unity, it's so pleasant, it's so good. There is an anointing in your home, so to speak, and it's amazing. So we do try to positively affirm when we see it.
Oh, I like all that. I really do. One thing that we can do as parents is avoid comparison. It's so easy to label, like even good labeling can be dangerous if we are, not, I think that limits our children. But if we compare them in such a way that pits them against each other or makes them feel less than, or going back to what you do, like kind of exploits their weaknesses, that, that never goes well. Like I have a friend whose parents told her she was the pretty one and her sister was the smart one. Well, yeah, of course it's wonderful to be pretty, but she grew up thinking that she wasn't smart,
Wow.
and she shared this, I forget when it was, but she shared this with me after she was an adult, right? And I grew up with these girls, and I was just astonished to find this out. And so even well-meaning labels can create comparison within our kids. And so really being mindful of the words that come out of our mouth, and teaching them not to compare themselves to one another. I mean, I have two girls. It's very easy for them to immediately compare their bodies. They're built differently. Like, let's not do that. Like, so anytime I see them comparing grades or comparing their bodies, like I definitely put a stop to that. I make sure I don't do it. I'm not 100% great at it, because you want to praise them in the things that they're good at, but you want to make sure that it doesn't become a verse, them versus you kind of thing.
Yeah.
And
that's where that discernment comes in.
And even pointing back to just like being able to, I was going to say this, but I don't know if it's a spoiler. The episode that we did about gifts, being able to name our kids gifts also helps in not comparing, because they're like, we're calling out what they're individually gifted in. So if you haven't listened to that episode, you should.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
And you know what? I've had conversations with my children in response to some of this. Like, so I had a very candid conversation with one of my daughters because she was believing something about herself, believing something about what I thought about her siblings versus what I thought about her. And I was able to draw attention to I actually had a conversation about their differences, that there is something to be said for the times when your sister's easier to get along with and you're pushing me away. There's something to be said about the lies that you believe about yourself versus what you believe about your sister. So like in reference to maybe if I favor one of them or I love one of them more than another. And I was very candid, and I would say, but if you think that I don't love you as much as your siblings, you have confirmation bias, and you are going to find every example that proves that. I go, until you determine that I love you as much as I love your siblings, you're going to keep finding reasons to think that I don't. And so I need you to start looking for all of the ways that I love you. I need you to look for all of the ways that, I'm going to interact with your siblings different than I interact with you because of your personality. And that's okay. If you want something more from me, if you want a different kind of relationship with me, tell me, like if you want, but I happen to enjoy this with your sister, but that has nothing to do with what I can and do enjoy with you. And so as they get older, we can have those conversations with them and just, instead of just saying, oh, just, whatever, it's not, that's not what's going on, or nah, that's ridiculous that you think that. Really talk to them about like what our mindset does and what our thinking process does to the relationships we have with our parents and even with our siblings.
That's really good. It made me think, it really challenged me. But then it left it like, when you get challenged, you're like, oh yeah, and this thing. I think this is interesting with healthy sibling relationships, is you want them to really be siblings and not necessarily like caretakers of each other.
That's good.
We definitely have had to be really intentional about that in our family. My daughter is younger than my son. My son has a hearing impairment, and her personality leads her to be very protective. And I remember quite young, when she was in school, I'm going to say first grade, he was second grade, and she knew he was having a hard time in school. And every day she would go up to her teacher and be like, is my brother okay today? Is he having a good day? And it was causing a lot of anxiety for her. And she just felt like she needed to do something to fix it if it wasn't good. And just how a lot of responsibility that she took on without us even like, we know, just her personality and the situation. And we have had to have really strong conversations with both of them. Like, hey, your brother and sister, yeah, you take care of each other, but you're not like each other's parent. You're not responsible for fixing each other's problems. Like, you're to walk life together. And I'm grateful that God brought people into me and Troy's life that kind of was like, hey, pay attention to this, because I see this in your daughter, and this will be her burden for the rest of her life if you don't address it. And I mean, recently they had a sweet moment together where my son was like, hey, let me be your big brother. And because she's always on the defense, she's ready to knock anybody out that's gonna mess with him, and he's fine, he can handle himself, but that's just her personality. But at the same time, it's like it can affect her own journey and growing up and all that stuff. And we'd be like, your brother and sister, you're not his second mom, you're not his or her second father, you are brother and sister. And that's what you get to be to each other. So that's something that we're kind of still figuring out and learning. And, we've had to seek out professional help too, to like, how do you help a kid who has a sibling with additional needs and they feel that burden and they're concerned? Then, you know what I mean? So something we're learning, but I think the key, as in with everything, it's just being intentional and being aware.
Yeah, that's good. I think one thing that I would just say is that, we did mention discernment, but like there are seasons of friendship when they don't need to be each other's best friends, or they don't need to be their everything. And that's okay. But understanding when it's because it's a natural flow of their ages. So for example, when my girls were young, my kids are 2 years apart, all three of them. And I saw a real closeness with the girls. And then I saw a separation between them. And I was a little bit worried about it. And I coached my one daughter around the fact that, okay, like your sister's in high school now. Like, I think I saw a little bit of this, like, kind of in those years where there was like a pulling away. They were they still got along. But I had to explain to my one daughter, I said, this is natural. Like she's gone to high school now. She's older. She's, trying to figure out like who she is and her place at school and in her friend group. And so has nothing to do with you. And I kind of coached her through that. And as soon as my middle hit 9th grade, they were like best buds again. So I feel like, like in those big transitions from like, elementary school to middle school and then middle school to high school, like you thrust that first one into a new situation socially, into a new situation. There's a little wrestling that's going on with them. And then it's kind of like, I describe it like a rubber band. And I've seen it with all of my kids as they go through these transition stages. There's a little bit of pulling away, but then there's a coming back, a pulling away and a coming back. And recognizing that it would be different if there was something that was at the, there was a root, something that was going on that was unhealthy, but recognizing the healthiness of separation, I think is really important. And again, going back to what you said, Alana, like they don't have to be together all the time. They can have some separation, some individuation. What do they call that? There's individuating. I don't know if that is the right word, but there is a natural progression of as they're becoming their own person, and that comes in waves. And I think that recognizing that's really helpful.
Awesome. Love it.
All right.
Totally agree.
Well, thank you, ladies, for having this conversation. I think it's really good. And every time I talk to you guys, I learn something. So
Same
thank
here.
you.
Same here.